Picture this. A massive truck driver, well, driving a massive truck, rolls the heavy vehicle right over on a slick, wet road. The safety team rushes out, clipboards in hand, and they start digging. And boy, do they find a golden nugget of non-compliance. They uncover that the driver's sight induction was, wait for it, exactly 1 month out of date. Ha! Case closed, right? It must be the cause of the crash.
But, hang on a second. Did that piece of paper, that expired sight induction, did it actually cause the tyres to lose traction on the wet asphalt? Did it physically push the truck over? Of course not. It is what we call a classic compliance distraction. It is a lazy explanation. My old mate Ken Horsepool talks about this all the time. We absolutely must separate the contributing factors in our incident from the non-contributing factors. If we do not, we end up with what I call a kitchen sink investigation report.
See, a contributing factor is directly on the causal path of the loss of control. If you remove it, the incident does not happen, or at least the consequences are vastly different. A non-contributing factor is just background noise. It is irrelevant paperwork errors that must be put aside in the analysis to avoid distracting stakeholders. When you stuff your reports with every tiny compliance breach you find, you dilute everyone's attention. The executive team gets a list of 50 minor actions, and the actual critical failed barriers, the real reasons the truck rolled, they get completely ignored. To stop this, we use what we call the PEPO filter. It is a data organization process. During data gathering, you list everything under people, environment, equipment, procedures, and organization. That is your PEPO Mark 1. But when you get to Mark 2, you have to sort the wheat from the chaff, and we do this physically on our chart with strict color coding. We mark genuine contributing factors in yellow, things like, say, the truck traveling way too fast for the wet road. And we mark non-contributing background facts in blue, things like a negative drug and alcohol test, or the fact that it was clear daylight, or that the driver had breakfast on time. Blue is just context. Yellow is your pathway to the actual root causes.
It reminds me of a shocker of a report I reviewed recently.
This safety team, bless them, they wrote up 3 major recommendations because some workers had missed signing their pre-start checklists. Meanwhile, they completely ignored the fact that the company had exactly 0 physical barriers separating workers on foot from reversing 10-ton forklifts. 10 tons! They were policing pens while people were nearly getting crushed by heavy machinery. That is the kitchen sink trap in a nutshell. So, how do we shift our thinking from punishing individuals to actually fixing systems? Well, Mary Jane Vince has a brilliant, simple way of explaining this using her daughter Zoe. Imagine 5-year-old Zoe dumps her entire plate of dinner straight into the dustbin. Now, a lazy investigator says Zoe has a bad attitude. She is bad. Punish the child. But if you look deeper, if you look at the system, you find Zoe ate her recess lunch late, like at 3:15 p.m. late. And why did she eat late? Because the school recess monitors failed to enforce the lunch schedule. And why did they fail? Because budget cuts meant there was only 1 monitor for 100 kids. So, was Zoe bad, or did the school system set her up to fail? This requires a shift in focus from the individual, the person model, to the organization. We have to build the causal house backwards, starting from the sharp end and tracing it back to the boardroom. We start with the absent or failed defenses nearest the event. Why was there no physical barrier to stop the forklift? Then we look at the individual or team actions. Why did the operator make that split-second decision? And finally, we uncover those latent organizational factors, like the resource limitations or the poor contractor management that set the stage months or years in advance. One of the most silent, deadly organizational factors we see is what we code as incompatible goals, or code IG. This is the quiet pressure to produce. Let me give you a real example from a light vehicle rollover back in June 2017 on the Newman Rail Access Road in Western Australia. The driver was travelling at 91 km/h on a wet gravel bend. Why? He was trying to make it to a mandatory training course on time. The organisation says safety first on all their posters, but the schedule says if you are late for training, you are in deep trouble. Those are incompatible goals. The driver takes the risk to meet the schedule, and management gets to pretend they had no idea. At the end of the day, if you treat an incident investigation like a compliance audit to police paperwork, you are engaging in a dangerous form of corporate self-deception. You might get a clean, beautiful report with lots of signed checklists, but you will remain completely blind to the next predictable failure. If you want to stop the next rollover, you have to be brave enough to look past the paperwork and fix the system. All right, that is it from me today. Talk soon.